How it all went south.
Here we are. Yeah. Back in the studio here in Atlanta, Georgia at 800 East. This is How It All Went South. I'm Sean Kipe with my good partner in crime here, Jason Hoch. Say hey to the people, Jason.
Hey, a former NBA player. I wear my jerseys around every once in a while. If you're seeing us on video.
Yeah. What is your height? Well, who was the NBA player? Spud Webb? Was that him? That was like 5'9"?
Yeah, here in Atlanta.
5'7"? Yeah. He's from Atlanta?
He played for Atlanta.
Well, so then you could do it.
I'm 6'1".
Yeah, but I'm just saying, 6'1's not very big in the NBA.
That's true.
So that's far removed from anything I'm going to be talking about today, so I'm glad we got out of the sports talk. That's our Guy Sports Talk minute for the episode.
The sports guys, he's the size of half the point guards in the NBA.
Yeah, right? Yeah.
And a quarter of the skill.
Yeah.
At most, and that's not a knock on you.
Yeah.
I would be like a 0.04% skill level with the basketball. I can dribble.
Well, the worst player in the NBA is better than everyone else in the universe. That's facts.
Today I got a story for you. You and I don't think we've talked much about this. You'll know the name, but you probably don't really know anything about this. This is a story that is based out of Georgia here, South Georgia. And this is a story that I was interested in covering in a series, and it just didn't come together. A mass murder was discovered on August 29th, 2009, when 7 dead bodies were found at the New Hope Mobile Home Trailer Park in Glynn County, Georgia. That's down by a town called Brunswick near Savannah. There were also 2 people found injured inside the trailer, one of whom later died of those injuries. And Guy Heinze Jr. was found guilty of 8 counts of murder and 1 count of attempted murder and is currently serving a life sentence in prison. However, many feel he too is a victim, albeit of a failed justice system. So this is the story of Guy Heinze Jr. and how it all went south for him. At approximately 8:15 a.m. on August 29th, 2009, police received a 911 call from a woman named Margaret Orlinsky. She was a resident at the New Hope Mobile Home Park in Brunswick, Georgia. And that woman said her neighbor was outside frantically screaming and inconsolable, claiming that his entire family was dead. That man was 22-year-old Guy Heinze Jr. Once he got on the phone with the dispatcher from 911, Heinze stated while sobbing in utter disbelief at what he'd just seen that it appeared his entire family had been beaten to death, noting that there was blood everywhere inside the small trailer. On arrival, police found 7 people dead and 2 others critically injured. As I mentioned before, one of those victims, a 19-year-old man with Down syndrome, would die of his injuries the following day. The sole survivor was a 3-year-old boy left with severe brain trauma from the attack. So, I'm going to just say this. This should hold true for most people. I can see by the look on your face it's going to hold true for you. Crime, murder, brutality, that stuff is just unacceptable. I think it should be in today's world. When you add into the mix someone with any kind of a mental disability, I can't imagine what would drive anyone to physically attack or kill someone with Down syndrome. I mean, it's just like...
And the other disturbing part is that you said a 3-year-old boy?
Yeah, that's...
I always think about this when you hear these cases of like a mother and father murdered and there's a baby, and that baby could be there for an hour, it could be there for a day, it could be there for 3 days, and you think of like just how helpless a baby is or a toddler is. That is disturbing and heartbreaking also, but and then think of the conditions that the baby was already in, but then think of the conditions with all the just nasty shit happening,
The
right?
trauma,
It's terrible.
It's horrible. That was, it's bad enough, this victim having Down syndrome, a young man, but when you talk about a child, certainly my kid is 3 years old.
Yeah.
And, you have kids. So you remember when they were that age, they're so helpless and just unable to defend themselves against someone that's an adult.
Yeah.
Surely an adult that's attacking them. But to beat a child like that, at that age, to the point that it has brain trauma. I mean,
there's so many things that can run through your head, right?
Yeah.
So,
and none of them are good.
what did that child see?
Yeah.
Did other people who were deceased as part of this, did they see harm being caused to the mentally challenged kid that died and the baby? Like, there's so much trauma even from those that were deceased, before they were deceased. Like, all that stuff is just absolutely excruciating.
Yeah, and if you imagine, your final moments are seeing that.
Yeah.
If that's how it played out, that's really hard to wrap your head around. It's extremely sad and infuriating to me. But the rundown, disheveled trailer was the location of one of the grisliest mass murders in Georgia state history. Really, I would argue any history. That's a brutal scene, any way you cut it. Officers described the scene as the worst they had ever witnessed, with every victim being savagely bludgeoned to death, minus, of course, the 3-year-old who did live, thankfully. Guy Heinze Jr. himself would immediately become a person of interest, and truly, I would say, the only person of interest in this case. Definitely the person they focused in on right from the start, and it doesn't seem like there were really ever any other serious suspects in this case.
So what was his relationship in this to everyone else? Like, why is he the main guy?
That I'll get to.
Okay.
That I'll get to, but he was related by blood to some of the people. There were 10 people, including him, that lived in this trailer.
Okay, got it.
And you got to think, too, you're talking a trailer that, you've seen a mobile home. You know what I mean? They're not big.
Yeah, even a double wide.
Even
10
a double
people?
wide. 10 people.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, and 8 of those adults. So close quarters, cramped. But he was really the only person of interest from the beginning.
And was he was also kind of the only living adult then, right?
Yeah, but he wasn't there.
He wasn't there. Okay.
Yeah, he wasn't there when this attack came. The theory is that he was, because he was the attacker. But Guy Heinze Jr. himself would immediately become a person of interest, truly the only person of interest, though he was described as being visibly distraught and, quote, freaking out the morning he discovered the bodies. He was arrested on drug charges and subsequently charged with 8 counts of murder and 1 count of attempted murder roughly 10 days later. So many have asked, how could someone kill, as we just did, how could someone kill their entire family? And even though some of these people he was not related to by blood, they were considered like family to them. Very close. How could someone beat to death a young man with Down syndrome or physically attack a 3-year-old? And those are absolutely valid questions that we may never know the answers to. But the next most asked question regarding this case would have to be, is Guy Heinze Jr. really guilty of murdering his family? And the biggest claim in this case against Heinze is that the evidence and timeline don't add up to place him as the person responsible. At least not to the point where you can, without a shadow of doubt, convict him of mass murder. So I want to go through some of that evidence with you and the timeline and see what you think, see what you guys think. Is Guy Heinze guilty, or did investigators get this one wrong? And I'll say too, there's been such a big push. Part of the interesting thing about this case to me is there's this massive push to get Guy Heinze a new trial. So I want to go into this entire episode with you knowing that right off the bat. Mm-hmm. He's been found guilty. He was sentenced, he's in prison. He's been there for years. But sort of like one of the other stories we did with the Fairbanks 4, there's been a constant push since he was arrested of people saying, this guy didn't do it.
It's one of those, we got our guy, he's behind bars, this is questionable, but you can't seem to pull him out of prison no matter what you do, right?
Yeah. This is a case of having sort of horse blinders on, it seems. How in a murder like this, and it'll maybe make more sense once we get into the evidence, and I'll break down that. But how can you not look at any other suspects?
See, I wonder if this is part of this is based on the conditions of, some of the guys from the Fairbanks 4, or in this case, Guy Heinze, right? He is living in a trailer with, 9 other people. They know he's not going to get the best defense. He's not going to have the top flight lawyer, and what's done is done. And so do authorities push harder to get him to be the guy that goes behind bars and we never hear from him again? And he's a kind of a victim of the circumstances that he's in that causes this to be so dramatic. Whereas if it's a little bit more white collar, a little bit, someone with some wealth or some money or some resources, that timeline to get him in prison isn't going to be the same thing.
That's an interesting point. When you have money for lawyers, you can get out of a lot. I mean, we've seen that.
Right.
O.J. Simpson, anyone?
Yeah.
But, very rich people rarely go to prison. It happens, but not as often as someone in maybe Guy Heinze's position.
When you got him, we know what to do with this guy, and there's nothing he can do about it.
Yeah.
I'm not defending him or anyone in that position, but the circumstances that they're under, that's tough.
Yeah. When Guy Heinze arrived at the trailer, he shared with the 9 other people, all either blood relatives or people so close he considered them family, as I said before. He walked into a scene of unimaginable carnage. 9 people, some with their heads and faces smashed in from the gruesome attack, lay scattered about the small trailer. Some still in bed, some lying on the floor where they slept, because of course, there's not a 9-bedroom mobile home, so you got to imagine what the sleeping arrangements and conditions were like in that trailer, which is sad in itself. When you think about it. He ran out of the trailer and began screaming, which alerted his neighbor. The neighbor, Margaret Orlinsky, called and was on the phone with 911 operator trying to make sense of what had happened, and Guy had run back into the home several times. He went to each member of the family to check for signs of life, initially believing everyone was dead. But on one trip back inside, he realized that 19-year-old Michael Toller was still breathing. That's the young man with Down syndrome, although his breathing was very shallow. Toller couldn't speak, but was making guttural sounds as he lay there in pain, his face bloodied and barely recognizable. Here's my thoughts on this. Could you, how do you put yourself in that situation? Would I run back into this home? Would I go around to each member? For me, I could see me doing that. Because that's a lot of... there's a big point in this case here where it's like, well, he went back in, and if you think about this is a crime scene, you're saying, I'm innocent. Oh my God, I'm going to call 911 and I'm going to wait outside. But if that's your family, people you love and care about inside... I could see me going back in multiple times and while trying to process it. And is everyone dead? Is someone alive?
So your point is that's the move of an innocent man, not a guilty man.
I mean, right off the cuff, I would think so.
Yeah.
From my perspective, if you were guilty, number one, I don't think you would want to go back in and face that.
Right.
Whoever did this, you can imagine, is not a serial killer. They're not. This is a brutal, 8 people, 9 people beat, 8 dead. That is even someone who kills in a crime of passion. Like that takes time to do.
Yeah.
It's not. I would think that even the person responsible for this would not want to be faced with that time and time again of their own free will going back into this trailer.
So whatever the case, he went back in there.
He went back in.
And whatever his thought was, He made his bed by going back there into a bloody crime scene
Multiple
of his
times.
family, and he can't take that back.
Right, yeah. Once on the crime scene, police discovered a second victim still alive, 3-year-old Byron Jimerson. Heinze cooperated with police, answering their questions and giving any information he could. Heinze openly admitted that he had just gotten home when he made the discovery and had been out using drugs the night before. Not smoking a joint. He was out smoking crack.
Right.
And he did not have any visible injuries on him, nor did he have any blood that was visible on his clothing at the time. Now, again, you're running back and forth into this crime scene. You're checking these people, and still, he's got a little blood on his hands from checking people.
Right.
You can imagine what that scene looked like. That in itself is, I don't want to say a miracle, because that's not the right word, but that's almost astonishing that running back into a scene like that multiple times and not having the forethought of don't touch evidence.
So just to play, like, again, I know the end of the story here in terms of he is in prison for this, but if his clothes are clean, what if he had changed his clothes when he did this, came back with clean clothes, and wanted to make this look like something else? I'm just setting
Sure. That's definitely a theory, and it's a valid one. I'm just saying that even going into this crime scene and going up to
being so gruesome that you
can't
avoid it.
Yeah, you think, again, a small room, these people were beat to death. If you hit someone even once with, just making this up, baseball bat in the face, that blood is going to spray.
Yeah.
Now, do that many times, each person, and 9 people. That place, small room, it's a mobile home trailer's 7-foot ceiling, 8 maybe, but it's small and confined. You're going to have blood everywhere, everything you touch, everywhere you walk in a situation like that. So it's miraculous, I guess, is my point, that he wasn't, even if that story is true, of showing up there, discovering this scene, going in and out of that mobile home 3 different times. It's pretty miraculous that he wasn't covered in blood just from that.
And it's also interesting, it's kind of 1 on 8 or 1 on 9 too, for one human to do all of that.
We'll get to that.
Okay.
Yeah.
See, but
I am glad you're thinking ahead, because you're already calling out there's already some red flags going up.
Yeah. I'm thinking about all those things, and we're just barely cracking. What's the timeline now? What was that, 8:18?
8:18 is when they got there. I think the police, or when the police were called, was about 8:18. Yeah. Heinze told the police everything he did leading up to the morning of August 29th. So his alibi, and he made statements, again, cooperative right from the get-go. Police are interviewing him there at the scene initially, and no signs of blood on him, no signs of injuries, that someone was fighting back. Again, I find that hard to believe. Guy stated that he woke up between 7 and 7:30 and got ready for work that morning. Around 8 a.m., he was picked up by his boss and a coworker and taken to the job site where he worked in construction building houses. Rain and foul weather cut the day short, and by 12 o'clock, Guy and his coworker, Zach, had been told they were done for the day and got paid. They made a stop at the bank, and then went and met some friends for drinks at Bubba Garcia's on St. Simon's Island. Little Bubba Garcia's is like a cantina, Mexican. And have you ever been to St. Simon's Island?
I have. I was there, I think, last year for the first time.
Yeah.
It was really fun.
Very cool little spot right off close to Savannah. Yeah. They spend a few hours there, and then they go to Zach's house. Guy leaves Zach's house around 5 p.m. on foot and bumps into his brother Tyler and a few others at a gas station, where they invite him to a small party at a Best Western on St. Simon's Island later that night. So, hey, come stop by. We're going to have a party. But he continues on with them, without them. Makes his way back to his trailer, shaves his head and showers, and spends time with family, drops a tool off to a friend. The actions that he made from that point on, or up to this point, are very well documented. And there are plenty of witnesses who've corroborated. There's
average day,
yeah. And that, everything he's saying, went and dropped a tool off so a buddy could fix his car, or goes to the corner store. And that takes him up through about 11:30 that night, at which point he leaves the trailer to meet a girl he was dating named Summer. He borrowed Russell Toller's car and left. That's one of the guys he lived with. And on the way to meet Summer, for whatever reason, changes his mind and instead went to a local trap house to buy crack. So, for some reason,
He plugged in Waze and it said go to the crack house instead.
here, I just wanted to try to put myself in that mindset for a minute. Like, yeah, I'm going to go see this girl I've been dating. You're cruising along. And it's like, nah, fuck this. He just like exits off the freeway, goes to a trap house to buy crack from a guy named Crazy, by the way. Crazy. Who else would you buy crack from at a trap house? At the same time, this is about 11:45 p.m., somewhere in that neighborhood. 4 of the victims, or would-be victims, were seen alive on CCTV at a little neighborhood corner store near Brunswick, Georgia. So we know they were alive then. Guy then heads to Barrington Park, which is like I think it's a county park and has campground, camping space, stuff like that. Heads there to smoke the crack that he just bought. On the way to Barrington Park, the route that Guy travels takes him past the New Hope Trailer Park where he lived, and he decides to stop and get a little bit more crack from one of the guys he lives with.
What's the approximate time of that? It's like after 11:30.
This is pushing 12 a.m. now.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, between 11 and 11, somewhere after 11:30, he leaves. Gets to the trap house. 11:45, midnight, something like that, and then is heading back. And I think a lot of these places are like a 20-minute, 30-minute ride from each other. So
Can I don't want to throw you off the story. I'm just curious what the makeup is of the people who lived in the house. We talked about the 3-year-old. We talked about the 19-year-old with Down syndrome. Yeah. But you talked about other friends that might be living there. Like, what is the makeup of, and just approximate makeup of everyone there? They're
all related to each other. Someone in the house is related to someone else. Okay. But I think it was Guy and his dad that lived there. I actually brought the names of everyone so I wouldn't. Yeah. Russell Toller Sr., Russell Toller Jr., Chrissy Toller, Michelle Toller, who was 15 years old. So that's all one family. Brenda Flanagan, who I think was dating or married to one of these folks, 49 years old. Guy Heinze Sr., so that's Guy's dad, of course. And Joseph West, who I think was married to or dating another one of these women here.
So it's not like it's a bunch of kids.
No, you've got, everybody you got a 44-year-old, two 20-year-olds, a 15-year-old, 49, 45, 30, and then you've got the 19-year-old and the 3-year-old. So
I'm assuming that's pretty important as we get into this.
Which is?
The fact that they're not just like mom and dad and kids.
Yeah, right. It's not mom and dad and 3,
kids and
little kids in bed tucked in. Yeah, it's not that. And from what I've seen online, some places, the guy Joseph West was a pretty big dude. He wasn't a small guy, and that's who Guy Heinze stops to buy some more crack. I guess Joseph dealt out of the window, so you would just one of the windows of the trailer you would roll up and rap on the window, and he would just hand you crack. But so he got some more crack on tick. If you don't know that lingo, Jason, Shane, our producer here, knows what that means. All day long, yeah. So he didn't have the money at the time, so
yeah, I don't know what that means.
No, that's why I'm telling you.
You see the look in my face. I don't know what that means.
Yeah, no, it means he's getting it basically on layaway. Okay. I'll pay you. I'll hit you back later.
Gotcha. What is it again?
On tick.
On tick.
Yeah. Is that right?
Okay, I got you.
On tick.
TikTok.
It's got nothing to do with TikTok. Would you say it only got so much time?
Only got so much time to pay it back.
Oh, to pay it back. I thought you were talking about me right now. I was like, is that to hurry up? Stop talking about the process of buying drugs, Sean, and get on with the story. Yeah, so anyway, he goes and buys some more crack on tick. He then heads on to Barrington Park and arrives between 1:45 and 2 a.m. So he was probably, I would say, you were asking about the time this was, I would say he was probably at that trap house for a little bit. And by the time he, maybe it's a 30-minute drive.
Yeah.
So this puts us at almost 2 a.m. Guy says that from around 2:30 to 4 a.m. approximately, he was parked by a large oak tree, smoking crack alone in the car. At 2:16, which sounds like a good time. At 2:16 a.m., 15-year-old Michelle Toller makes a phone call to a friend and leaves a voicemail. Not in distress, totally normal. So we know at that point, at least at 2:16 a.m., everyone's alive. We can assume that everyone's alive and everything's good. At 3:45 a.m., another call is placed from Michelle's phone, and that call lasts 36 seconds. 3 minutes later, there is another call attempt from that same phone that was partially dialed or misdialed. I don't know, and I tried to find who that call was placed to. It wasn't 911, or it would have been made pretty clear. Neither of those calls. So my instinct, and probably yours too, tells me that somewhere in that time, that 3:45 a.m., this is kind of when it's going down. Either she's calling a friend, hey, I'm freaked out. What's going on? But even that makes no sense to me, because you've got all these other people in the house and adults.
Yeah.
If you were scared or you were concerned, you would ask them, or you would go to them. Hey, I heard something outside. Or you would call the police. 911 is a lot easier to dial than 770-26. You know what I mean?
Is there any chance that she's calling to ask where Guy Heinze is? Because it is 3:45 in the morning?
No idea. And I don't know. And I don't know if the 15-year-old if that's something that would normally be, but we'll find out when we come back. We're going to take a break. All right, we're back. We're talking about Guy Heinze and the mass murder down near Savannah in Brunswick, Georgia. So far, I know there's been a lot. There's been a lot of times. We have an alibi for Guy Heinze established that is, I think, solid all the way up through maybe 2 a.m. We've got some phone calls that have been placed by people inside this trailer up until 3:45 in the morning, 3:45, something like that. Yeah. So where we're looking right now is maybe that's the time when something's happening. This is going down, or things are beginning, right?
Got it. Yep.
Okay. After Guy leaves Barrington Park, he heads where he's been smoking crack for the last hour and a half or so by himself, according to him. He heads to the Best Western Motel on St. Simon's Island, where he was invited to that party earlier in the day by his brother. And that's just under an hour drive from where he was at, this Barrington Park. So you're looking at, he's saying he left about 4:30 a.m., and it's about an hour. So that's going to put him to roughly 5:30, simple math. At approximately 5:30 a.m., he knocks on the door of the hotel room and no one answers. He goes to a payphone and calls his brother Tyler saying, hey, I'm here, let me in. Then goes back to the room, arriving shortly before 6 a.m. And you've got a guy named Jonathan Carmichael who actually testified to letting Guy in to that hotel room just before 6 a.m. and says all was normal. Not freaking out, not nervous, not covered in blood.
He was high on crack and drove an hour, behind the wheel. But other than that, he's fine.
Sure, but I'm going to say this guy, it sounds like he's probably somebody he's not a stranger to crack.
Sure. I think your point is, things are not, weird.
Yeah, and all right, if they know he's on, look, the guy shows up at 5:36 in the morning for a party. Hey, come by at, 10 o'clock, and he shows up at 5 a.m. going, hey, guys, you still going?
Let's watch cartoons together,
Seriously, Jesus, you got any cigarettes? I'm out of cigarettes.
On tick.
Get them on tick. I'll get you back. But, it's important that his timeline, according to him, and now you have a witness who's testified saying, yeah, look, at just before 6 a.m., I let him in, and dude was normal. But to strengthen Guy's alibi even more, he's seen on CCTV at 5:36 a.m. with no apparent blood on him, and is also seen by a witness named Jessica Pollard, who says she saw Guy come and go 2 times between 5:30 and 6 a.m., acting normally with no blood on him. I think she was the clerk at at a little, I think maybe the convenience store where the payphone was.
Okay.
That's not very clear. But that's a pretty solid, he's accounted for by CCTV and 2 witnesses between 5:30 and 6 a.m.
But there's still a gap.
There's still a gap.
There's still that 3:45 to like 5:30. Like, you can take a shower, you can get new clothes, you can get your nails done. I mean, there's a lot that can happen in an hour and a half.
I wouldn't know exactly how long it takes to get my nails done.
I'm just throwing it out there.
Yeah, but you could, and we'll get to that.
Okay. I
love it, but we'll get to it.
I wish you wouldn't have told me how this ends. Otherwise, it would be.
Well,
really
you don't know
down
how
the
it
rabbit hole.
ends. I mean, you know that he's in jail, but
Yeah.
maybe there's a twist.
Okay, keep going.
Was that convincing?
Not really.
Damn it. Between 6 and 7 a.m., Guy and his brother Tyler eat breakfast at the Huddle House. And for all you non-Southerners out there that don't know what Huddle House is, have you been?
I mean,
You know what it is.
yes.
Yeah, Huddle House is like Waffle House. And if you don't know what Waffle House is, turn this off right now.
Yeah.
Little breakfast joint, right? So they go, it's open all night. They have breakfast between 6 and 7, and there is a receipt that shows they paid at 7:10 a.m. He then travels back to the New Hope Trailer Park and finds the crime scene. The 911 call was placed at 8:18 a.m. So, yeah, his alibi, honestly, from the time he woke up until, and I'm even going to say 3:45 a.m.
Mm-hmm.
because we know that at least one person was alive in that trailer at the time. And I have to think everyone at 3:45 was alive because there would have been a 911 call placed. Who are you going to call your friend Janie? If all this is going down, it's 3:45 in the morning, you're freaking out, you're a 15-year-old girl.
That's when the phone call from the 15-year-old.
2 calls, yeah.
Yeah. So it probably can't happen before that. Is the point?
Couldn't.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because
And at 2:16, 4 of them were seen on a security camera, so we know they were alive.
Yeah. Okay.
They were at a corner store.
Right.
So to me, you've got between 3:45 a.m. and 4:30 a.m.
Yep.
That's just me. That's not what prosecutors say in this case, but that leaves a window of time. But when you think about 8 people dead and 1 severely injured by one person, that's actually not a lot of time
Yeah.
in my eyes, right?
Right.
But then from 5:30 a.m. until he arrives at the trailer park, also alibi is corroborated because
Yeah.
he's seen by so many people or numerous people. He's seen on camera.
Yeah. I really don't. I don't see where this is going. I don't see how prosecutors could find him to be the guy. It's not clear to me what's next.
It gets worse. It gets worse for Guy Heinze. I want to know, and I don't know this, was the time frame of the murder, and we kind of discussed, but prosecutors say that it took approximately 2 to 3 hours to commit this murder. And they're saying it happened basically the time that Guy Heinze says he was at that park, at Barrington Park, sitting in the car,
Right.
firing it up. They're saying that was the time. So between 2:30 and 5:30 in the morning.
Okay.
I want to know, was that time frame decided upon forensically, where a medical examiner said, this is the time they died, and they went, oh, Guy Heinze's alibi is unaccounted for at that time.
Right.
It must be him, or was it the other way around, where they said, oh, that's the only time that you were available? Well, then that's the time they must have died. And I don't know the answer to that, but I think that would be very telling one way or the other.
So for you, and I think for me, that 3:45 call feels like it can't happen any sooner than that because there's no drama or red flags happening. And what prosecutors are saying is actually no, back up the timeline earlier, and you've got a window of like you said, like 2 to 5 or something like that, where you've got a 2 or 3 hour window. That's a little bit more difficult to account for if you are that person, if you're Guy Heinze, if that phone call doesn't happen in the middle, right?
Right. Yeah, but that call does, and again, it's not a call to the police. I can't even imagine a world where, and even as a 15-year-old who's freaking out, someone's coming in the house, and let's say, I'm just spitballing here, but attacking other members of your family.
But we still don't know what that phone call was about.
No, because it didn't connect. And it says the first call was 36 seconds in length, but it wasn't connected. She didn't talk to anybody, apparently.
Yeah.
So whether it was just ringing for 30 seconds
Yeah.
or, somebody's voicemail clicked on and no message was left.
Yeah.
But the second time, it looked like it was an impartial number. So that makes me think that that's when it started. That was going down.
Could be she's in the back trying to call someone that goes to voicemail. That's a 36 seconds or so.
Yeah.
The second one is like, I'm panicked and I just can't dial, and something may have happened to her while she was trying to dial. Again, I'm just trying to put the pieces together.
That's what I assume.
Yeah.
Like, that's where my mind goes.
And by the way, regardless if it's Guy Heinze or not, that could still be true.
Sure. 100%. I think that's the only way it could. I mean, it just doesn't make sense otherwise to me.
But that's still a big hill for Guy Heinze to get over.
Sure.
If, no matter what, that there's this 3-hour window like prosecutors are saying.
Right. And I know that there was a person who lived like at the entrance or somewhere in this park or near this park where they said, well, you would have had to pass his house. Guy Heinze, if he went into Barrington Park, would have had to pass by this guy's place. Well, he didn't see you. And the guy said, I went to bed at 10 p.m. Guy's like, I went in there at, 2:30 in the morning. And of course, what am I going to do? Make myself known? I'm going into park and smoke crack.
Right.
Like, let's be fucking real. So that witness that the prosecution used, sorry. So when we come back, we're going to talk about the evidence. That obviously is a case like this. That's going to be the biggest hurdle for Guy Heinze to get over, or for prosecutors to get over. So we'll find out how it all went south when we come back. All right. So we're talking about Guy Heinze and this mass murder in South Georgia. We've talked about alibis and timelines and all this. Now we're going to get into the evidence of this case, because that's what's going to make or break it for both the prosecution and Guy Heinze. That's the big battle, the big hurdle to get over. So the piece of evidence that would end up being the one strongest piece of evidence used to convict Heinze was several small blood droplets on his shorts. And through DNA testing by the GBI, those droplets were confirmed to belong to 3 different victims. They were very small, and they were actually found. He had like these reversible like gym shorts on, and they were found on the inside, which is odd. So did he flip the shorts inside out because he had blood on them? But again, they're very small droplets. It's not like it was all over you. He also had some blood on the palm of his hands and the soles of his bare feet, I think. This was explained, of course, by the defense as being transferred as he checked for signs of life, over the 3 different trips he made into the to the trailer park. The palms of the hands is from leaning down, checking, whatever you're going to do. That's pretty easy to get past. There was also a small piece of paper that was found allegedly inside of a drawer in the trailer that had a partial bloody palm print of Guy's on it. And I say allegedly because it's never actually been confirmed that that's where the paper was found. And that sounds very, very weird. Like, how can that not be confirmed? These guys pulled, I forget, it was like 500 or 600 pieces of evidence out of the trailer. Investigators I'm talking about, medical team.
Oh, I'm sure.
Yeah, tons of evidence. And the problem was, you hear stories like this far too often. Several different pieces of evidence were placed in the same bag together before being sent off and sitting in a hot car or sitting in a box in a place to get tested. Not handled properly at all, a lot of this stuff. And so then they have this piece of paper that they go, oh, well, it's got a bloody... Where'd you find that? I don't know. Was that the one we found in the drawer in the nightstand? And it kind of was like that. I don't think they've ever figured out where that came from, but it's important because it's a bloody palm print.
But that came up in court regardless.
Yeah, it did. Yeah. No murder weapon was ever found, though the butt of a shotgun was found near Russell Toller's head with the barrel missing, which is what they assume that the killer used to bludgeon everyone with, is the barrel of a shotgun. There would also later be a pair of crudely made nunchucks found by the trailer park manager near the trailer with what appeared to be dried blood on them. but they were never followed up on from what I can find. That apartment manager, I think, also found a knife in the trailer park. And you're talking fairly shortly after this crime. And these nunchucks, I say crudely made because apparently they're like 2 lead pipes with a chain, like duct taped. I mean, really, but had what appeared to be dried blood on them. I don't think police ever even... They never tested it. It's so bizarre.
Is that like a weapon that's actually used? Like, it seems like, again, something that's only in movies. Like, if you're gonna, I hate to say it, but if you're taking down the trailer park home, you can't. There's not even enough room to swing these things. Like, it's just.
Well, I mean, there is, I guess, but. Think about 2 little lead pipes or steel pipes, maybe 10, 12 inches long with a chain in the middle. You could do some serious damage with those.
But were they able to actually tie that? Like,
I don't think they were ever tested. That's, I don't even know that police ever actually came and collected them. I know there was a statement from the woman who found them that was like, she called in and they're like, yeah, all right, thanks. We'll let you know if that is something we need. So, Guy's weak alibi from 2:30 to 5 a.m. This is the big issue with this case. Prosecutors claim that Guy and Russell Toller got into a heated argument over a bottle of prescription pain pills that escalated and ultimately led to the murders. They claim Guy was in a drug-fueled frenzy during the attacks and acted alone. First of all, I'm going to say this. Bullshit. You are either with multiple... There's no way you have 9 people, and okay, 2 of them are children. But a 15-year-old girl can fight back. Certainly when threatened with her life, I imagine that. But you have 9 people. You have one person who comes in the middle of the night, beats each one of them to death multiple times, beating them multiple times until they're dead. No one else in the trailer wakes up. No one tries to escape. No one tries to stop him. No one grabs a lamp and smashes him over the head. Nothing. That's the prosecution's theory. How realistic does that sound to you?
Yeah, I don't actually know how I feel about this because it wasn't like 4 other people weren't already out in the middle of the night. Like, this seems like they're all night owls and they're already, like, I don't know who's sleeping. I don't know who's awake. I don't know if they're down at the convenience store. Is this like normal for everyone to just be up at all hours of the night and sleep during the day? I mean, I could see if you're using the butt of a rifle or something, what happens? Could you take out 2 or 3 people? I don't know who's awake. Is everyone awake? Are there people sleeping?
They're supposed to be all asleep when this murder is committed. That's the theory, is that they were beat to death in their sleep.
But if you walk into the trailer, does it appear that is the case? So you talked about not everyone having a bedroom, of course, not sure. 9 bedrooms. So are they laying where they would be sleeping? There's got to be, here's my point. There's got to be a way to be able to kill that many people in a time frame by one person if it's one person.
It's called a grenade, which wasn't used here. I mean, I just think that there's also evidence, it appeared evident that someone had tried to escape through one of the bedroom windows.
Okay.
But again, on Guy Heinze, you have no defensive wounds.
Yeah.
You're in a trailer. Let's say this room that we're in right now is, I don't even know how big it is, 20 by 30 or something like that. The inside of the trailer is not that much bigger. Trailers, mobile homes like that aren't made, they're not soundproof by any means. The walls are thin. If you step hard, if I'm attacking you, you're going to feel that whole trailer shake. There's no way that all of those people slept through an attack like that long enough for it to get to the last person. I couldn't imagine that's ever a possibility.
And I would maybe disagree. I think one person could do it at that time with a running head start, if you will, and it may or may not be Guy Heinze. Like, even removing him from the equation, yeah. Whoever that is, to be able to walk in and maybe take some of the the bigger guys out, like Guy Heinze Sr., like the bigger guy, Joe, right? Take them out first. You've got 3 of them that are younger, and a couple are female. I don't know who the person.
Yeah, but no one's gonna make it the 8 feet to the door. No one, you know what I mean? Like that's the confusing thing to me.
I do, but it's not 0% and it's not 100%. Is my point. We don't know. We don't.
Well, for sure.
Yeah.
I'm just saying my feeling is that's very, very unlikely. Let me put it that way.
Yeah, I'm just saying.
You're allowed to. The motive that they said, that this whole thing was over painkiller, whatever, that Guy and Russell Toller got into a fight. But Guy had a bottle of the same pills in his car at the time the murders took place. So to me, that's also a stretch. Why are you going to kill somebody over some pain pills, some whatever, Valium or Vicodin or whatever, when you've got some in your car? Right. And you're going to beat 8 people to death. It's a stretch.
And not only that, beat them the way that they were beaten.
Sure, I
actually think that's actually something we have to talk about. It's just the way, like, you started this whole episode off of, this is bloody, it's gruesome, it's like nothing I've ever heard or seen before. This is kind of how you walked into this story, right? You can't just say there was an argument and people died. Like, the way they died, too, is a really important part of this case.
Yeah, I think so. Absolutely. It's and they say he was in a drug-fueled frenzy. He wasn't on bath salts. Right. You smoke crack, you get stringy, and sure, I'm imagining you act out of character quite a bit, but that's a stretch for me. Physical evidence: the blood on Guy's hands and his soles of his feet at the crime scene were easily explained as being transferred when he checked for signs of life. We know that. And the blood on Guy's shorts was a minuscule amount, just a few drops on the inside of those gym shorts. How the blood got there is a little more difficult to explain, but again, the bloody crime scene was the answer, for his attorneys anyway. Right. The blood was transferred by contact somehow due to the proximity of Guy to the objects, victims, the bloody walls, things around him, lying down next to the victim, and your shorts getting moved. There's a million ways.
What's the difference between minuscule drops of blood and he's covered?
Sure, 100%, yeah. And they say, in the bathroom of the trailer, there was evidence that someone had, cleaned up in the sink. Mm. There are experts in the trial that came forward and said if whoever committed this, it wouldn't be a simple quick wash. Like, you're not just taking a quick shower and getting all the blood that would have been on you. It would have been the fine, mist. It would have been in the cracks in your ears, in your nose, in any body hair, it could be in the inside of your mouth.
Which is crazy that we can know all those things now. Like, it used to be, in Psycho with Norman Bates, he's cleaning up the shower where, he's
just rinsing it.
Yeah, and he's wiping it down, and then he's, throwing the materials in the back of the car and pushing it into the little pond or lake behind the motel. Things do not disappear.
No.
We talk about digital footprints and how everything you post will be there, even though they say it's not going to be. But physical evidence and what we can now track and through DNA, and it's more than just fingerprints, really.
Well, yeah, you think about, especially when you deal with blood spray, like fine mist or blood spatter, that these tiny droplets that get in the pores of your skin, that even if you've ever had you've cut yourself bad, had blood that's kind of dried on your hands or something, it's actually pretty difficult to wash off.
Did you watch either the scripted series or the documentary The Staircase on HBO?
Yeah.
I mean, the blood splatter at the bottom of the stairs, and then the recreation of that with the FBI or the officials. Yeah. That was fascinating to me, of just how precise and how they look at that, because from all angles, from recreating it to whatever. Yeah. Very laser focused on that.
Yeah, they did that really well, I think, too, in Making a Murderer.
Yeah.
She did the whole recreation, and it's down to a science. Yeah, so the blood on his shorts there, that was a big thing that hung up Guy's alibi and his claims of innocence in court because there was 3 different victims' blood in those droplets. But again, you had these forensic experts, as I mentioned, that just said, it wouldn't be a quick wash up. It's going to take real time, and he probably did not do that in that bathroom because you're not going to hang around in a murder scene like that. At least I'm not. And going to properly clean yourself. So the biggest question here is, how could you bludgeon to death 8 people without anyone else waking up and fleeing, calling 911, fighting back, even a neighbor hearing, cleaning up, disposing of a weapon, and getting to, this Barrington Park place, then to this motel on St. Simon's Island that is an hour drive away, even at that time of day, to be seen on camera and by witnesses from 5:36 a.m. acting normally, no blood. So you would have had to bake into that time, right? The murders, the disposing of a weapon that's never been found.
Changing clothes.
You
talked about someone washing themselves or trying to in the place, so it's not like they just left necessarily. Like there's a little bit of a hint that this has happened, and like, oh no, what do I do now? I'm trying to maybe wash. Like that's not an easy thing either. Like you said, it doesn't just kind of all wash off and being so gruesome. Yeah. So I think your point is that there's a lot of things that have to happen no matter who you are too. And there are a lot of things that would have had to have happened perfectly and within very, very succinct time. You wouldn't have had a second to spare, if even that, because of how he was seen at all these different places at specific times and on cameras. And the victims, we know, were alive at least 3:45 a.m. There's also something we haven't talked about, which is if it's Guy Heinze in the trailer and he goes completely like you said, crack, rage, all those things, right?
Yeah.
You commit this. And then all of a sudden you're calm. All of a sudden you're showing up at a party at the Best Western. And then you arrive back at the scene and everything goes crazy for you again. All the while you're on meth or crack or whatever it is. So you can control your emotions that well after something happens. That in and of itself is a trick.
Well, and being on crack. Listen, I don't know how much time you spend around someone on meth or like coke or crack or something like that, or what you know about it. But I mean, it's not a drug like pot makes you, you chill.
Right.
You smoke a joint, you chill. Not on those other drugs, bro. They take you the other way. So, those are drugs that make people paranoid by nature. That's part of the side effects of them. Imagine committing a fucking mass murder and worrying about cleaning up the evidence and all this other stuff that you would have to do.
Right.
And somehow controlling yourself to...
That's what I mean.
Yeah, to go and then be cool, normal, and pick up your brother and say, hey, let's go get breakfast.
Yeah, and so we look at, a lot of times, we look at the physical evidence, we look at the timeline, but there's also, like, what is the emotional timeline that's happening at the same, in the same realm. Yeah,
well, Guy, again, would have had to clean himself thoroughly and do all this stuff.
So tell me what happens.
Yeah, the forensic expert we were just talking about, by the way, Michael Knox, stated in court it would have taken more than a quick cleanup or shower to get rid of all the blood on Guy's skin had it been him. Right. So there is one hiccup here in Guy's, other than this missing period of time where he was by himself smoking crack. He did go in, and when he was in there, he removed this shotgun, or part of the shotgun, from the crime scene. And he did lie about that initially, and when they found it and removed it, or found out that he had removed it from the scene, he stated later that he had only done so because it was a stolen gun, and in this mindset of being on drugs and just everything that was happening, he was afraid that, you were going to get in trouble. That sounds ridiculous to some people, probably, that's what you're going to think of, is I'm going to get in trouble for a stolen gun when my family's been... But again, on crack, on a drug like that, you're completely irrational.
It's like flushing your drugs down the toilet because they're going to show up. And
Yeah.
you have drugs, so we've got you there.
You know about that.
Nope.
So I think at the, to sort of wrap up where this is, and again, we talked about a little bit of that timeline and what all it would take for this to actually have happened if he was responsible. He would need to, after all the cleaning up, disposing of the weapon, he would need to drive roughly 30 minutes to the hotel where he was heard knocking on that door at 5:30 a.m., seen on camera at 5:36, and witnessed 2 times by a store clerk between 5:30 and 6 a.m. And if you take the minimum time that prosecutors gave to commit this murder of 2 hours, personally, I don't see how you would have been able to make all that work. Again, unless... Well, I don't know. I really don't. And I'm not sitting here advocating for, per se, his innocence. But when you talk about a new trial, which is, there's this whole push. And if you go on Facebook, there's a group called Guy's Voice. And they actually have really, really good detailed breakdowns of the timeline and issues that are, not just, I think Guy Heinze's wife or girlfriend runs that Facebook group, but there's a lot of people. There are attorneys, there are, people providing insight and building out these timelines and issues with the trial, and they want a new trial for him. Of course, they want him exonerated. I'd be curious, and that's sort of where it's at. You ask, like, where does it end? That's where it's at. He's in prison, and
I guess I don't know how I feel about it. I don't know. There's nothing that says that he necessarily did it, but there's nothing that says that he didn't do it either.
Right.
So I don't, in my mind, I don't see anything that he has as a true alibi in that 2 to 5 window that says, well, of course he couldn't do that. And there are, it's a stretch, right? Emotionally and physically to be able to get over that hump for him. But he could have changed his clothes. He could have come down off of his high. He could have had his friends lie for him at some of these places later on. He could have, there's a lot of things that could have happened. But at the same time, it could have been someone else. And so what is, outside of the dispute with the drugs, with the other guy?
Russell Toller.
Russell, thank you. Outside of that, what is the motive for
That's it.
anyone to do something so heinous?
Yeah. Well, and there are other things, of course. This case file and everything involved, there's so much we wouldn't be able to cover everything certainly in one episode. There were people calling in anonymously saying you need to look at these other suspects. So there were some people who even made threats directed at this whole family of saying that we're going to kill, we'll kill your whole family. Probably something over drugs, but those people were really never investigated, or they weren't investigated deeply enough, I don't think. I just look at this case as, you summed it up perfectly in saying, I'm not convinced that he is innocent, but I'm not convinced that he's guilty. And that's how I feel. And I think if that is the common, consensus, right? You can't put a man in prison for the rest of his life for that. You have to prove without a shadow of a doubt in a crime like this, where it's a mass murder, you can't just put someone in prison for life unless you're positive.
And so a prosecutor would say, yeah, we did prove that, and a jury of his peers did convict him, and that's why he's there.
Sure.
And that's tough. We should,
Yeah.
I mean, to me, this is why we're doing video and YouTube, is we'd love to hear from the audience. What are your theories? What do you think? What do you know about this? And I had a question for you. What was the thing that drew you to this story initially? Was it the shock of the event and the gory details of the murder, or was it something you learned a little bit downstream about how, again, we've talked about this, how you weren't sure one way or another where this would go? I'm kind of curious what you grabbed onto.
Yeah, I don't know. I think that is part of it. I mean, there aren't a lot of murders really anywhere in the country like this, where it's that many people in one place at one time, and that are again, that are all beaten to death. It's not like somebody came in with an automatic rifle and, okay, that kind of stuff happens. But this is a really unique crime, and it just doesn't happen that much. So it was interesting.
Yeah, and a lot of times when this happens, when a murder is committed against, a person's family, a lot of times a suicide is the thing that happens later on, because they know that they've done something so horrible that they can't live with themselves. They know that they've done it, and this is the end of this experience.
Yeah.
So that didn't happen here.
No, and he's maintained his innocence this entire time. I think that there's like two ways to go with that. People will either stick to their guns and never back down, even if they're guilty, because you have to at this point, like you're committed. But I think there's also people that at times, it's been long enough and I'm not getting out of prison. Like, you're going to slip up. You're going to tell somebody in prison. You're going to confide in somebody, or you're going to get pissed off, or whatever it is, and just kind of go, fuck it. I'm done living this. I'm done like trying to live up to this.
Yeah.
So anyway, that's the story of Guy Heinze, and I would love to hear from you guys. I think there's probably going to be a lot of people who are going to chime in on that one, because it's got a lot of traction online. That case does, and if something does ever happen with it, if he gets a new trial or anything, we'll keep you updated. So I think that's it for this episode. From 800 East, I'm Sean. That's Jason. This is How It All Went South. See you next time.